So fantastic. So it gives me great pleasure this evening to introduce Bishop Richard Taylor. Richard was born in Whangarei and went to school in Whangarei in Auckland. He graduated from Canterbury University with a degree in electrical engineering in 1977, which was the same year he joined the Theosophical Society. In 1979, he formally joined the Liberal Catholic Church through being baptised at the Liberal Catholic Church, which was located inside the Theosophical Society premises in Christchurch. Bishop Alfred Lambden ordained Richard to the priesthood in May 1982. From January 1985, Richard and his family resided in Queensland, where he conducted Liberal Catholic Church services in Brisbane and worked as an electrical engineer in various workplaces. In 2007, Richard was awarded his PhD in electrical engineering from the University of Queensland and joined the Queensland University of Technology in 2010. His research area was in applied superconductivity as a quantum mechanical material. 2016 was the year of Richard's consecration to bishop, and he was subsequently directed to the Regional Archbishop of Australia and New Zealand for the Liberal Catholic Church. Richard lives in the Gold Coast in Queensland, Australia, and his parish chapel is dedicated to St. Michael and All Angels. Richard's topic this evening is Bridging Science and Religion in the 21st Century Through Mystical Christianity. Richard, welcome. It's lovely to have you here. Over to you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. And thank you for that very warm welcome. It's a lovely spot you've got here, a lovely building. And I'm looking forward to giving this talk. And more importantly, perhaps for me, hearing your questions afterwards. So I'd love to hear sorts of things that are on your mind. Science and religion form uncomfortable bedfellows in this part of our lives. That's not always been the case. And I really want to talk about bridges across that, but using present day terms and languages that maybe are much more in keeping with the way we think. So let me just start with some quick history. Liberal Catholic Church founded in 1916, middle of the First World War. So that's quite extraordinary. You think about the turmoil in the world that occurred then. It came out of a group of people who were interested in the old Catholic movement in the UK, that is the last vestiges of the what are now called Roman Catholics that escaped Henry VIII. So it's sort of a long history. The apostolic succession is talked about in the Catholic tradition, and that means a connection between the early part of Christianity and the present day, connected bishop to bishop to bishop. That spiritual tradition is common for other spiritual traditions as well, for Hindus and for Buddhists to have a progression, a connection from teacher to teacher to teacher. They don't call it apostolic succession, but it's the same thing. So let's go back in history. I'll just take you back now to the 3rd century AD, the 3rd century. So some of you who know about this time knew this was a height of persecution of Christians. And I often used to wonder why they were making themselves so unpopular. I don't know whether they were unpopular because they couldn't tell good jokes or what it was, but it turned out that they were particularly unpopular because the understanding and the appreciation of Christ's words were being absorbed into the culture of things like the German regiments. And when the Caesar of the day wanted to expand the Roman Empire and get them on board, they had certain conditions that had to be met. So this is pretty good leverage. When your soldiers are suddenly decided to be a different religion than what you are, given that maybe the Caesar of the day was the god of the day. So in the 3rd century, there was a sudden decision to be made, which was made, and the Christian followers became the state religion. So these Christians went from living in the catacombs. So what are catacombs? Well, catacombs were where you do a lot of horizontal burying. If you want to go and hide from someone, it'd be a good place to hide, wouldn't it? Very high pong there. Nobody wants to go in the catacombs. And so as long as you could stand that, the Christians really conducted their rites as they were then. So suddenly they went from invisible but hiding to being the class to everyone wanted to be associated with. The bishops became the go-to guys for parties and state banquets. Pretty dizzy experience. Not everybody was happy in the Christian community, and a number of the Christians in the community said, listen, this is not all a good story, actually. We have now been given pretty much unmeasured wealth, power, and influence. So we go from really focusing on the heart of what Christ taught to being the most desired invitation in town. And a number of them said, we need to preserve the heart of the teaching. And they withdrew from Rome and they went into the deserts. And they became what we know as the Desert Fathers. This was in Syria, in Palestine, the back of Alexandria. And they existed in 1s and 2s and 3s and 10s and 20s and 50s as the word spread. So the Desert Fathers adopted a particular set of techniques, which was, as they said, keeping the flavor of Christ or the flavor of Jesus on their tongue at all times. The flavor on their tongue at all times meant they were saying something or thinking something. So those of you who study the makeup of people, and the Theosophical Society is an excellent place to study that. Know that you've got different parts of your mind. It's your waking consciousness, and then if you close your eyes and meditate undisturbed for 10 minutes, you're a genius. If you do close your eyes for 5 seconds and hold your concentration, you're doing very well. So we all know that when you close your eyes, what pops up is your monkey mind. Little, likes to distract you with all sorts of things. Well, the monkey mind needs to sort of be brought slowly back to where it should be, which is behaving itself. What the Desert Fathers recognized is that part of human nature needs to be slowly integrated into the whole of human nature. But one way to do it is to do it with a sound. So they might just say the Lord's Prayer continuously, either with their inside voice or out loud. Or they might say, Kyrie eleison, Christe eleison, God help me, Christ help me. Or they might say some other short prayer. So the Desert Fathers then slowly got a reputation for being very focused, for practicing the essence of Christianity as they saw it. And the people that then gathered around the Desert Fathers grew more and more. Nothing really became codified from what they did, but it was a very stable community. In about the 8th century, the Benedictine movement codified what the Desert Fathers were doing. And one of these codifications was called Lectio Divina, that is, sacred reading. And so this is practiced by everybody, Christians all over the world, not necessarily Christians, but I'm just using Christian examples. And Lectio Divina is something that I just want to talk about in a little bit of detail at this point, so it just links with my story later on. The process of Lectio Divina is very simple. We just use the Bible for an example. So you can just take the Bible and open it up where it is, anywhere where it opens up. And then somebody reads a passage, maybe 4 lines, but no more than 6 lines, out loud to either themselves, if they're on their own, or a group of people. Something in that passage will catch the attention of an individual, the person reading. It'll resonate, a word, a phrase, a small pause, and then it's read again. Then a period of quietness to use the analytical mind, that's the waking up mind, the mind that says, I like that, I don't like this. If I buy a Porsche, I'll be happy forever. All that sort of funny stuff that the mind does. I don't like black, I like white, da-da-da-da-da, discriminate, discriminate, discriminate. So use that part of the mind to say, why am I resonating on this section? Why am I resonating on this passage? And then something might come up, something might arise, might pop up into the mind, and then that process stops. You stop it. And then you close your eyes and rest. You rest in the thought. And you rest with the concept that your heart is now communicating with you. So you've been using your eyes to read, your mind to discriminate, and then you're resting in your heart to see what arises. So that Lectio Divina is a very powerful technique. And what it's a technique that does is it softens the heart, softens the heart. And the heart is where we get heart wisdom from. And now circling back to Christianity. So Christianity has got a couple of very simple messages. I mean, we are humans after all, and we need very simple messages. But these messages, we need to be reminded pretty much every day. Why is that? Well, because the world is very corrosive of thoughts, isn't it? You wake up in the morning, you know what your name is, you're off to a good start. After that, you've got to remember all the good things you were going to do yesterday when you were remembering to do them. If you don't do them, well, then by the time you get to the day after, you've pretty well forgot what they were. That's just the way it is. There is so much bang, bang, crash, crash, clatter, clatter, so much monkey mind to grab on, like, la, 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 that just poof, dissipates all this stuff. So we get up and we have a discipline, just like the monks had a discipline, just like the desert fathers had a discipline. Always something or other, but it's consistent. And the discipline then gives us a connection, and it gives us an accumulated spiritual momentum. And that accumulated spiritual momentum gets larger and larger the more it's regularly practiced. So what happens is then the message of Christianity is transformation of heart and forgiveness of sin. Very straightforward. That's what Jesus said. He said it in a number of different ways, but he said, I want you to transform your hearts, particularly all you characters out there, transform all your hearts, pointing to all the scribes and Pharisees, you know, all the whatever, bad guys. And then, not the bad guys, but, you know, the guys that are a little bit rigid, like us. And then forgiveness of sins, which was a pretty radical idea at the time. But what I'm talking about tonight principally is the transformation of the heart, or I used the expression before, softening of the heart. So in the transformation of the heart, what Jesus was saying is, become flexible. So we might all say, listen, we're all pretty flexible. We're members of the Theosophical Society. We're so flexible, we can stand on our head and scratch the back of our heads with our right foot. Maybe not. But what is going on inside is what really counts. How flexible is our thinking? Are we really open to where we are? How much do we know about ourselves? So, you know, the constitution of man, like mankind, is not everything that we see with our physical eyes. So if we want to see physical stuff, we use our physical eyes. If we want to use emotional stuff, we've got to use our emotional eyes. If we want to use intellectual stuff, we've got to use intellectual eyes. Sometimes we get a bit confused, where we think, oh no, it's just the same eyes if we want to see that. No, no. Different substance, different sense apparatus. different things, different sense things. When Jesus was alive for not alive for 3 years, but when he was teaching for 3 years, he understood that then probably just from reading the gospel, I haven't had a chat to him about this in detail, but he seemed to think that, okay, signs and wonders have got a part to play in the human condition. Very compassionate, did a lot of healing. But signs and wonders woke everybody up. And yes, they might have come for their own special reasons and the suffering and all the mental problems, the emotional problems, the physical problems, and he managed to deal with them. But at the same time, he was teaching. The signs and wonders said, now I've got your undivided attention. I want to tell you about the transformation of the heart and forgiveness of sins. And they said, no, thanks, look, you fixed the leprosy, I've got to go now. But something sunk in and it stayed with us. So in the softening of the heart, where does that get us? It gets us to a different level of understanding and appreciation. Of what? It gets us into the heart wisdom that is characteristic of the Christ. The heart wisdom, which is characteristic of the Christ, is the basis of our Western civilization. That's what our laws are based on. Now, a lot of people don't really realize that, and they just think the laws popped out of the woodwork. But the Salvation Army didn't pop out of the woodwork, and neither did the Red Cross. All of those are based on Christian principles. And so a lot of our laws in the West are at their heart coming from a Christian platform. Now, to connect from our secular society, where we've got mobile phones and internet and Zoom and all those wonderful things, how do we then make the jump? Well, we don't have to solve everything ourselves. When our mind gets hold of something, our mind is a great specialist in obsession. Waking consciousness, expert in obsession. And if we don't watch it, it gets extreme. We absolutely, when we fall in love with something or other, we have to have it. Because if we don't have it, we'll be miserable. And then we have it and we're not quite as happy as we thought we were. So we've got to have another one. And that's obsession. So the Desert Fathers knew how to deal with that. But what it led to was an additional experience of the softening of the heart. Now, one of the things that happened and was demonstrated by Jesus the Christ in his 3 years was the coming together of what we might call a split in people's makeup. So we can be inspired and we can feel very lofty and connected, and that's a wonderful experience. And we might say we're connecting with the soul, I could use that word, or the Christ within, or the divine within. I can use those expressions. But at the same time, we have these other aspects of ourselves, all the other stuff I've been talking about. A bit of emotional turmoil, a little bit of lumbago, a little bit of a sore ear, a little bit of a worry about stuff. What Jesus demonstrated was removing that split between the high ideals, the Christ within, and what we might call the human condition, and bringing them together. So, bridging the divide between what we might call the lower personality into the upper personality. And those are recorded and given different names. So the transfiguration, that's what was happening during the transfiguration. The amalgamation of the lower bodies with the upper bodies. And there's some words that you can use that are Sanskrit words or Buddhist words, but there's Christian words as well that describe the same thing. So this coming together and this unification was then the work that Jesus did. And then there's the offering of that work to give it up. Some of you might know about St. John of the Cross writing about the dark time of the soul, the dark moment of the soul. You might have heard some expression like that. When I was talking to some colleagues in America, and they said, how would you describe Christianity? I said, well, it's very straightforward. You have an opportunity to grow as a person and to integrate your lower self with your upper self. And then you have to give it all up and you feel really miserable and you feel like you're dying, and then it comes right. And they said, that's not a very good story to tell people, but that's the path. And of course, it's expressed in different ways in different spiritual traditions. But what happens is you start with an imperfect vehicle, plural, they become purified, then they become integrated, and it's still you, but it's sort of different you. Like before enlightenment, chopping wood, washing the dishes. After enlightenment, chopping wood, doing the dishes. Different person, different experience, different worldview. So let's try and join this up to where I've been describing things that maybe unorthodox Christianity, maybe, but really Orthodox Christianity, just expressed in different ways, and the secular world. What is the secular world based on? It's based on science and technology. Now, some people get a little bit confused because scientists are sometimes a little bit loose with their language. And they sometimes hear what scientists say, which they say, here is the law. Here is a law, Newton's law of gravity. They hear the word law. Oh, it's a law. So obviously there's another marble plaque somewhere with this chiseled on it. And perhaps when Moses came down, he had a little trolley behind him. And he had, so the 10 Commandments, and then he had a little trolley with a whole lot of other stuff. No. So if you listen more carefully to more thoughtful scientists, what they'll say is, we are proposing a principle, and we'll go out and try and get some data to see, does it support the principle? And if it doesn't, there's one of two things. One, I'm too tired, I'm not going to go out there again, that was really hard work. Or two, we'll go out there again and get some extra data to make sure that was right, and we'll see if our principle needs changing. And so when Newton came up with the hypothesis where he was sitting in his mother's orchard, where he'd got away from the plague, thank goodness, and he was looking up at the moon and thinking, this apple that falls to the ground, is it what the moon is doing? Is the moon falling towards the earth, but falling in a way that it keeps going round and round and round? And so he came up with Newton's principle of gravitation. So what did Einstein do? Well, Einstein was a dreamer and unorthodox and a very slow learner at school. His parents thought he wasn't going to talk. They thought he was a bit stupid. He was quite old before he started to speak. Very clever child. It's a good trick. You get out of doing the dishes that way, wouldn't you? So he then finally questioned everything, questioned, and that's what he did all his life. Questioned and questioned. And finally came up with this alternative view of gravitation and said, you know, gravitation is not what you think it is. It's not one thing pulling another. What it is that the massive stuff changes the geometry of space, and so things follow a different geometry. Now, what does that mean? Well, out of all that comes advanced cosmology and black holes and how the planets move and so on and so forth. It also explains quite a few other things which Einstein didn't think of at the time. So we've got principles that focus on what? Using your senses or an instrument to get some data to prove a principle. But if we look at quantum mechanics, it's got about as much logic as Alice in the Wonderland. And it was never meant to be like that, except people put logic onto it. Because I said, look, if you're going to be clever and talk quantum and hang out with the big kids and look really cool, well then, how come an atom can just jump from here to there like that, and you don't know what happens in between? And the answer is, look at the time. I've got to catch a bus in 2 minutes, so I can't explain it to you. Well, we don't know what goes on, so there's these big gaps. But what did quantum mechanics do? It helped explain the data, and it gave us a new branch of mathematics. So we got new principles. Did it make us happy in a sustained way? Did it enrich our lives? Did we decide to become missionaries to Angola as a result? Not really. But it helped give us light-emitting diodes, and it helped explain things like superconductivity that I happen to be interested in. But it's just a set of tools. So what we've gone after then in our lives is the convenience and the lovely flashy stuff that things like that give us. And there's more and more of it. When I was growing up in the 50s and the 60s, the thing that characterized that time was perpetual boredom. Excellent thing in retrospect. And I can sound like, a really boring old person and say the trouble with young people today is you're never bored. The trouble is that it's right. You're never bored because you've also always got flashy stuff to distract you. So the disadvantage for us when we were bored is that the only things that are apart from being bored that we could do would be to go to a dance or go to church. So that was sort of more exciting than boredom. And now we get the pendulum at the other extreme, where there's a lot of flashy stuff. And if you want to be bored, you go to church. It's interesting, isn't it? We're just sort of woof down the other end of the spectrum. Let me come back to where I started. We started to talk about the softening of the heart. And then I started to talk about the secular world, the scientific world, and how that's come about as the development of our waking consciousness, the process of getting data, the process of principles and bringing them together. And we have very many wonderful things. We have vaccinations, we have buildings that don't fall down, we have ships that don't sink, we have Zooms, we have computers that we can communicate with, and we can share thoughts with anyone we like in a very effective way. Around the world, Jesus couldn't do that. He came to do a slightly different thing. He came to plant the seed and said, I'm going to teach you and show you how important it is to soften your hearts. And then to his disciples afterwards, what he must have said, because we get little fragments of these teachings that came to us, he said, and now you're going to go to the next step. I want you now to connect your waking consciousness with your transformed heart. And that's the bridge between flashing, disconnected technology and wishy-washy, lovey-dovey stuff which has got nowhere to go but feels neat and nice, but you're not too sure what to do with it. We can produce this effect with Lectio Divina that I was describing before. It's a very effective technique. It works with everyone. It's very simple. And the more you do it, the more effective it becomes. But if you want to become what I'm now going to call an integrated person, someone that's beginning to integrate the waking consciousness with what we might call intuition, which comes in flashes and it's a bit unreliable. Gut feeling, it's a bit unreliable. If we want to move in the direction where we combine both of these human attributes, love wisdom, which is different from intellectual knowledge. but which can be married together in a process where the two gradually start to live together, then that's the sort of next step with Christianity. That's where Christianity should have progressed faster in the 2,000 years that were around. Instead, what we find of Christianity, if you ask people about Christianity, if they know anything about Christianity, they say, well, there's the Pope and there's somebody else and stuff, and they drive BMWs, and they got big houses, looks pretty groovy life, you know. And unfortunately, the fears of the third century have come about. The third century has come about it. We've got structures, power, money, authority. All those things are not intrinsically bad if you're doing constructively things with them, but they become a way of life instead of what was actually meant to happen by the founder, Jesus the Christ, was, here's a principle. I'm restating a new principle which the Buddha put on earth 500-600 years before I'm here, and which Zoroaster put on the earth about the same time, but he used different language. He used flame and light. Now I'm saying, transform your heart, integrate it with your waking consciousness. Develop techniques to do this, but develop techniques that you can use in your daily life, because it's no good just rocking up on Sunday and feeling pious and wonderful and giving threepence to the beggar as you go out. Threepence is about $7.50, by the way. Sort of inflation joke. So it's not like that. It's something that's got to be active every day. So I think that Christianity has got to evolve like everything else has evolved. And its forms will have to evolve. And in the liberal Catholic Church, we've been given a very powerful structure which gives great flexibility and allows us to do that. At the moment, we've got guide rails, which are called services like Eucharist or Communion. We've got solemn benediction. We've got a healing service. We've got services, you might say, in the morning prime or services in the evening. And they are languages that resonate with the heart and contribute to the opening of the heart and softening of the heart. And there's intellectual thought built into the structure of the Eucharist and the solemn benediction and the healing, which helps to connect the transformed heart with an enlightened mind. So those guide rails are there if people learn about them and learn what the words mean. If they don't learn what the words mean, then it's pretty boring and we'll just sit down the back and look at our iPads. So got to do actually a little bit of work. But the Liberal Catholic Church is set up as a platform, a Christian platform, to encourage this growth. Now, what would happen if the boss came back tomorrow? By the boss, I mean the Christ. What would he say? Well, clearly he'd say, Richard, you're doing a great job. Now I'm going to give you a promotion. No, he didn't. But he's not going to come back with sandals in his pajamas, I don't think. He's not going to come back with long hair, looking like something out of 20th Century Fox. He might come back, gasp as a politician, or more gasp as an economist. He might come back as an engineer. He might come back in all sorts of shapes and forms. But what we can say is, when he returns, as he said he would, it'll be to intensify the next stage. What have we got in the world? Separation. He'll address that. Have we learned to transform our heart and connect it to our intellect? A little bit. We sort of get quite excited when we get university degrees. We think we're wonderful. We've just forgotten about the heart bit. We focus on the heart and we're not so useful around the house changing light bulbs. You know, we've got to sort of just get it in balance. So there's lots of things that we could be busy in our Father's house, but we've had 2,000 years of sort of mucking around. Now's the time to sort of stop mucking around and get on with it. So I'm going to stop talking in a moment. So you might like to ask questions or discussions or whatever, or straighten me out on a few points. That's fine. I don't mind being straightened out on a few points. But let me just summarize. Desert Fathers developed a technique which kept their monkey mind quiet. But at the same time, it softened the heart and opened it for heart wisdom. And then gradually, techniques evolved the connection with the intellect. And so the bridging of the intellect, the enlightened mind, with the wisdom, the heart wisdom, led to the integration of these people. And this, I believe, is a practice that can contribute to us. While we live in the midst of miracles, that is technology, I say to my students, the 21st century has got 3 amazing miracles that are happening simultaneously: music, mathematics, and materials. Now, because I'm an old person and obviously extremely sus, they don't listen to a word I say. But if you look at any of those areas, music, mathematics, and materials, it's the age of miracles. We live in that. But we've got to understand what it means in terms of how do we live with one another? How do we enhance one another's life, and how do we enhance our life without being so distracted that we sort of forget why we're here? And we might be so bored, we might go to church one day. What extraordinary thing. As long as you don't tell your friends about it, it'll be all right. So it's been my privilege to talk to you tonight, and I'm very happy to have a discussion about anything. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
When you talk about the topic of the heart, does that imply as a result of compassion?
Yes, it's compassion arises. The compassion that Jesus is sort of known for came with that heart softening. He said, I want you all to be like me. You know, disciples are a bit thick. They said, no, we are like you. We've got the same sandals as you and everything. He said, I want you to have the same softened heart as I've got. So I can face danger and I can show great compassion to this individual without changing breath. It's got to have the breadth to it. It's got to have the resilient breadth to it, width to it. Yeah.
I don't want to do one of those annoying like comments disguised as question, but it is a question. And
Was that the question?
the question is prior to probably the 20th century, the thing that bridged the gap were things like philosophy and literature. You know, you had your scientific advancement, then you had faith, and then alongside them, equal recognition for a very long time was philosophy, was literature. Like Immanuel Kant has been instrumental in a lot of the Western laws as well as Jesus. I guess one asking is, was philosophy ever a sufficient bridge? Why has it fallen out of fashion in such a way that it's kind of denigrated compared to science?
Can you repeat the question for everyone online?
Probably not. But in a short form, there's an appreciation that philosophy, which used to be a lot more stage front and center, is not so prevalent in the community. In some parts of the community, it hasn't fallen away. So it sort of just pops up in strange ways. In the world of physics, you've got physicists who are practitioners, and you've got physicists who are theoreticians. And so if we had half a dozen theoreticians in the room, a number of things would happen. One, would never get a cup of tea, but they would discuss philosophies amongst themselves. And the philosophies that they were discussing were their model of the material world and how it might be transformed or understood. But they would be using philosophical language that you might find with all the traditional philosophers. Just that they didn't they wouldn't talk about the abstract things that philosophers in the 16th, 17th, 18th century talking about celestial influences and all that sort of thing. And it's not generally available to people to sort of stumble upon 6 theoretical physicists, just like it wouldn't be possible to stumble upon 6 philosophers who are discussing about angels and how they fit into the celestial picture of things. So I think it's often important to realize society has changed over the last 3 centuries, but society has unbelievably changed from about 1946 to about now.
I think the good way to airway, because you've got all these boards, you've got the golden mining things, you've got the Rashomon, you've got the Jewish Jewish.
Yep.
And so there's a, what way do you think that
Well, the way that I look at it is, and this is where theosophy helps out a great deal, you've got to take the long view and the broad view. So the one thing that I'm pretty sure about is evolution is unstoppable. It's unstoppable, and it continues to evolve in ways that don't always suit us.
What?
Yes, from anywhere to anywhere for any aspect of nature. The whole works. I think snails evolve. I think uranium evolves. I think human beings evolve spiritually and physically. I think planets evolve. And those are all on different time frames.
Kind of convoluted. There's a lot of bad stuff all of a sudden it's saying, but we are now suddenly realising, the dangers of.
Yes.
The timing is quite interesting because we've now become very aware of how important it is not to do some things.
But not all bad things are bad. We have to sort of step back and say, why are we calling that bad?
Well, not
Well, it's inconvenient if you're under a bomb. Yeah, but if someone's got, no, we won't go down this one because it'll get too tricky, but you really got to take the long view. That's all I can say. Yep, there we go. Let's all be happy.
Okay, I'll take a question online.
Yep.
And I'll come back to you, Dean. Okay, Ewan?
Yes, hello. Greetings from Katikati. And greetings to my old colleague, Ray Poynton, if you know him.
Yes, I know, Ray.
Tell him I wished I'd made my escape from TM when he did. But I have since done so. Anyway, I've become aware that there's quite a large movement growing in Christianity for Christian meditation.
Yes.
And they're doing research on some of the mantras they use actually are from Aramaic. And also, perhaps more importantly, that the attention and the meditation is said to be in the cave of the heart, where the Indian rishis said is the center of consciousness. So they drop the mantra into, not into the mind, but into the cave of the heart. And I'm just wondering if you're aware of any such techniques in the liberal Catholic Church, or if they teach any meditation.
Well, the quick answer is that the they of the liberal Catholic Church is sort of me and other people that are part of the liberal Catholic Church. And we teach a number of meditation techniques. The Lectio Divina that I was describing is a little bit similar to what you were describing there. They're not necessarily part of the liberal Catholic Church per se, but they are techniques which we think are of real value to people. Yeah, it's the only bit of Greek left in the Eucharist.
Yeah, my question is related. Shortly after I got married, I stole a book off my husband, who was a great collector, still is, but no longer my husband, collector of books. And it was about the Desert Fathers and the Prayer of the Heart. And it was written by a Roman Catholic nun.
Heavens.
And it seems to me much like what was just described, meditating on a short phrase or a word. I
Yes.
used to use the word Jesus on the breath,
Absolutely.
in the heart.
Hmm.
And I've done that now for years.
That's great.
I tried different names. I once tried Allah, but that was much too strong for me. It's pure fire.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. That's the technique. It's the word that means something for you. And it generally, people who have practiced it for a while, it transforms in its meaning for them, which is another back to front way of saying they are being transformed. You know, it's like this funny story about Mark Twain. When he was 18, he said his father was the most stupidest, ignorant, stubbornest person he had ever encountered in his life. And he couldn't stand him a moment longer. And he left. And he worked on the Mississippi boats as a pilot. And he came back after many years when he was 21. And when he came home, he said, "It's absolutely remarkable how much my father has learnt in the last 3 years."
I was thinking along the lines of analysing and resonance with the views to all the different things you talked about, atoms, you know, like the whole universe in and out of harmony and self-destructs, and that's going on all the time. And that can go right down into our body, the sense of relaxing, because your body gets out of harmony. And it's same as contact, you can come in and something that seems right when you're talking to someone, you're listening to something, being a mathematician or musician or physicist, and maybe that's in the video just side of what we individually and collectively
Yes, absolutely. Evolution is relentless. It's conducted using Christian language by the angels. They're responsible for running the show. The creator sets up the template, the angels put it into place, and they run with it. And sometimes we get in the way of it and it hurts, but when we're in tune with it, it doesn't hurt.
I'll just one other thing. Did I hear you right? Did you say the church didn't start till 1916?
1916.
Oh, 16, so because I was thinking across Harry Banks when I was a wee child.
Oh, no.
He was a bishop.
Yeah, no, he was causing a lot of trouble before the 1960s. A little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not quite that old, but yeah.
You mentioned earlier on evolution was for the long-term view and the broad view. I didn't quite pick up on the concept of the broad view.
The broad view is it's evolution and everything, but at different time frames. So we just think about things that we think never change, like a slab of marble, or I'll just say uranium because we sort of collectively know roughly a little bit about uranium. And uranium is evolving. How is it evolving? Because we call it radioactive. What's radioactive mean? It means splitting. It's becoming something else. Uranium splits and splits and splits until it becomes lead. Isn't that funny? So we use lead to protect ourselves from the radiation from uranium. Yes. So that's just an example that I can say quickly. But that time period exceeds our living period. And so we have to sort of read it in a book and accept it and then say, okay, well, that's outside my time frame, but that's the breadth that we go for. And then we can think of a lot smaller things. If you look on YouTube or something or other, you're looking at the division of cells. A video through a microscope showing the division of cells. You binary division, so-called. Kablonk, and then kablonk, and then there's 2, and then there's 4, and then there's 8, and then there's 16, and there's 32, and then there's me. So that goes fast. What's the gestation of humans? 9 months. What's the gestation of elephants? It's a bit longer, isn't it? About 2 years. And so we've got these different time frames and we give them different labels, but it's evolution moving at different speeds.
That's just a question of the comments, perhaps again, that it's refreshing to hear evolution talk about as well, because it's certain religious circles of the past, I think there used to be a talk about or suggested evolution as regulated, instituted by the environment.
Yeah.
I was like the last speak. Somebody could be excommunicated or some story from the past. But it seems you've been able to reconcile it in yourself. Well,
Yeah, no, I didn't have to reconcile it. I just think it's a good idea. So I think it's God's law is evolution. And I think it applies the spiritual realm, the emotional realm, the mental realm, physical realm, to the whole works. And I just think it goes on with us or without us. Jesus came to earth to indicate, actually, the Father would like you to be part of the gang. If you'd like to if you want to join my gang, and I'll tell you how to do it. First, you soften your heart, and then you connect up your intellect, and then you transform yourself, and now you can become part of my gang. And that's evolution. So, to me, it's just a natural extension of God's law.
Richard, it's interesting. My teacher, Ravi Ravindra, said we've got a choice between being a conscious servant, following the law of evolution, or being an unconscious slave.
Yeah.
And that's the only choice we have.
Yeah, I mean,
Evolution is occurring.
we're not always very clever. We keep sort of misunderstanding, and all the bad things that happen in your life, as we sort of know when we get older, are lessons. We're just a bit slow sometimes, and they're often a bit subtle, and we often have to slow down. And wisdom is often throwing lots away and ending up maybe with just one thing, and you say, oh, right, I wish I knew that earlier. Some people think wisdom is putting more and more on the trolley, but I think it's paring it down, shaving it down, making it so crystal clear that it just resonates for you, just for you. So everyone has got a unique, as part of the evolutionary plan, we must all have a unique role to play, unique. Nobody can do what you're uniquely organized, equipped to do. And then when we try to do stuff, sore nose, stub toe and all that stuff, and eventually we get it, and then we make the contribution. And when we make the contribution, I think we evolve. But I think because we're fairly stupid collectively, we spin our wheels a lot, but every now and then get a neat idea which is right. But as good luck would have it, as we accept, perhaps, or at least contemplate in the Theosophical Society, but certainly in the Liberal Catholic Church considers reincarnation as a natural extension of God's law of evolution.
Okay, I've got one just comment from Ganesh online. Thank you, Brother Richard Taylor, Bishop Richard Taylor, for a very nice presentation of the Desert Fathers and the softening of the heart. Are you in New Zealand for some more time? Could you also enlighten us where we can have LCC active in New Zealand apart from Auckland? Thanks a lot. In kind regards and best wishes, Ganesh.
Well, the short answer is the pendulum in New Zealand has swung to a little bit of a quiet spot. And so I'm just trying to fan the flames we'll do something in Wellington and then perhaps something in Christchurch. So that's the quick answer.
And he's speaking in Christchurch tomorrow night, but I don't know if they've got the Zoom, so.
I'm just going to tell jokes in Christchurch. So you won't hear any.
Okay.
Good. I go. Stay.
All right. Okay. I'd like to thank you, Richard. Fantastic. Combining the head and the heart. Integration, really good. Someone's on TV, that's all right. On the TV. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. So I'll close the session formally. Next week we have Al Scrobridge speaking on the Coastal Masonry, and he will be online with us from Auckland on Zoom.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Have a cup of tea.
Good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
Now, what I'll do is I'll unmute.
Hello.
I'll leave you guys online to have a chat if you wish.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay.
Good night, Kana. Monday, be careful.
Hi, Maureen.
Hi, girls. How are you both?
Hi, darling. Well, life goes on.
Is everyone in the lodge?
Life goes on.
Hey, everybody.
All right. Are you guys keeping warm?
Good night, Simon. I
Amma,
came late.
hello. Goodbye.
I came late today.
Yes. Yeah, we're good here. We're very good.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll switch everything off now. All right.
Bye.
Okay. See you guys. Good to see you. Bye. Bye.